There's a storm right in front of us, and most of America doesn't even see it. An entire generation of young women has been pushed into a life script that promises freedom, but delivers anxiety, isolation, and despair. They were told independence means going it alone. They were told success means rejecting family, marriage, faith, and selfless purpose. What they weren't told is what happens next when the applause fades and loneliness begins. That didn't happen by accident, it was engineered, and it's time to really bring it out to the forefront. Let's talk about it. So today on Lynn's Warriors, we welcome someone who has been warning us about this shift and studying its consequences. Jennifer Galardi is Senior Policy Analyst for Restoring American Wellness in the Heritage Foundation's DeVos Center. We're going to talk, well, let's just talk about Jennifer a little bit. She's a health and wellness expert and writes extensively about health, culture, and even policy. I'm going to throw in there. Jennifer has been exploring even media, academia. Do you like this, Jennifer? I'm writing all these things about you.
Yeah, go for it.
I hope you like it. I hope you like it, and culture. You're writing about culture, have reshaped what it means to be a woman in America, and how the result has been the rise of engineered anxiety, mental health breakdowns, and a generation struggling to find purpose in a world that told them they really don't need anybody. Jennifer brings her perspective and truth. It's not a personal attack against anybody. It's a cultural rescue mission. That's what I'm calling this. And if we want to be down the road, want to rebuild strong families, or just even build strong families, we must first build strong young women. And I'm going to throw in there teen girls, everybody. So Jennifer Galardi recently wrote this wonderful op-ed that caught my eye. Most women are on crazy pills and it's bad for everyone, which explores the growing dependence on SSRIs among young women. The website is heritage.org. Jen, I'm going to give your website as well. Okay, jennifergalardi.com. And I'm going to say, let's jump in with you. There's so much to talk about. Welcome, Jennifer, to the Warriors.
Oh, it's so nice to be with you today, Lynn. Thanks for having me.
Of course, absolutely. Okay, first we're going to start with this because I'm always curious about somebody. What made you become an advocate and a health and wellness expert? Why did you like all of this? Let's start there.
Well, I'll try to give you the short version because I know we don't have too much time. I moved out in California in 1998. I had studied public policy in my undergrad degree and realized I didn't want to work in DC. I spent 2 years in Birmingham, Alabama, and realized that wasn't really for me. And I think I was seeking. I was a kind of a free spirit. I wanted to break free from the constructs of my family and what I'd been taught in this kind of conservative idea world. And, like a lot of lost souls, I moved to Los Angeles and I was seeking. I was a dancer growing up. I kind of got back into the dance industry and that translated into fitness. I started teaching dance fitness classes, started doing DVDs, working with some celebrities on projects. And I've always been a seeker. And so at the same time, I think, seeking God and, my purpose in the world. And in the meantime, I kind of just got lost in the way, as a lot of young women do, particularly in Los Angeles, who think they're going to be like some big superstars, right? And find fulfillment and all that. And I was getting drip fed this feminist idea of what a woman is, and that if you have sex like a man, you'll feel empowered and you're a goddess, and, kind of the boss bitch mentality. Sorry for the language, but that's kind of our boss babe.
No, we're very real here, Jennifer. Just go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Boss babe, boss bitch, whatever. Like, you can do it all. You can be empowered. You don't need a man. And so I slowly kind of got indoctrinated unconsciously around that. And before I knew it, I woke up and I was single, and I kind of put any desires that I may have had for a family aside, all to pursue kind of this career. I mean, God takes everyone down a particular path. So I don't have many regrets. I had a wonderful life, but I do look back and say, maybe I would have done things differently. And so that's kind of why I'm personally very impassioned about talking to young women. And then as I'm noticing, and I'm Gen X, so I didn't realize what was happening in the world until I decided to go back to grad school. And in my grad courses, it was a lot of younger women. I was in my 40s by then, and these ladies were in their 20s. And there was this incident where a girl in my class just kind of said something like very cavalierly about taking her SSRIs. And I'm like, isn't that something like we're not promoting? Don't we? I think you told
Yeah.
me the story of like women just kind of pulling them out of their purses in the middle of a luncheon. And it's like, oh, I thought there was some shame still left, some stigmatized.
Yeah.
I don't want to stigmatize mental health, but when everybody's on it, is everyone really depressed, or has this just become the easy button that there should be no struggle in life? And so anyways, I kind of dug a little deeper, and that piece I wrote was the result of my digging into the research. And also, like I said, my personal experience. I had been through depression, and I actually, I don't tell many people this, but I did have an incident where I ended up in a psych ER. A friend of mine was worried about me. I had taken, a little too many sleeping pills, and she called, and the medics came and busted into my apartment and took me to the emergency room in Austin. And, they wrote me like a prescription for SSRIs. And I didn't know. I was like, well, maybe this will help. Right? Maybe this will get me over the hump to whatever I need. And I went to the pharmacologist, and they said, have you ever been on these before? And I said, no. They said, well, this is kind of a high dosage. And they only gave me like a month's worth of prescription. And from what I understand, you need to take at least you need to be on SSRIs for 6 to 8 weeks. My point is, they kind of just wrote me this prescription without any evaluation, without kind of any follow-up saying and they're like, yeah, go see somebody about it. And I'm like, this is weird. And when I went to the pharmacologist, he said, well, it's kind of a high dosage if you've never been on these. And, God bless this man for telling me that. And I said, well, can I take a half a pill? And he's like, well, these aren't really, you can't do that. These aren't you can't do that with the generic brand or something. And he said, and if you want the other, I mean, it was just this whole thing. And I decided, screw it. Basically, I'm not going to do this at all. And I struggled long enough with it to realize that it was my seeking God in all the wrong places that kind of was the underlying problem. And for me, it was a spiritual sickness. And I came back to Christianity eventually. And I've had struggles with sadness, but I'm not depressed now. I was in this kind of self-help, vague spiritual world, where you're constantly looking for things to fix, right? Yeah. Like the Brene Brown worlds, the vulnerability. And I found the more you did that, the more narcissistic you become. And so I think that's the other piece of this is we're encouraging these women to do all this self-help and find themselves and dig up their trauma. And you become extremely narcissistic, and it's not helpful to any mental issue that you might have, is to keep focusing on it. And I talk about that in the piece, is most religions will tell you the best cure for sadness, depression, anything you're feeling, is to get outside of yourself. Go help somebody else. Don't constantly mull it over. Again, there's a happy medium with seeking help, but really selfless service to family, to friends, get yourself involved in something else other than yourself. So that kind of ties a lot of my story together with the work I do, with the piece I wrote. So I hope that helped a little bit.
Now I have 5 million questions for you, but that's a problem with me. But thank you for sharing your story. It's very brave. Now, Jennifer, do you publicly speak to young women or other women about your story?
I don't go on a public, I do work for a policy institution. I do look at it within the MAHA movement, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the mental issues in young girls and what's contributing to it? Is this kind of proliferation of SSRIs contributing to it? Is this something that needs to be better monitored, if not regulated? Ultimately, my belief is I love heritage. I love what I do, but policy can only do so much when we have a culture encouraging women to seek out pills for as a solution for everything. Then I think, it's going to be very hard. And you have doctors very easily writing scripts because they can code it in and insurance will cover it. I talk about in the piece too, the easy access to these drugs through telehealth websites such as hers.com, which I talk about it in the piece again, that I go through the exercise of trying to get these pills on my own through that website. And it's 20 minutes later, I could have had pills shipped to me.
Yeah. We're going to get into that. Why I asked you that question about it is if you talk out, there's a very well-documented youth, mental health crisis, but that also is our teens and young women and young men as well. And nothing resonates. We do a lot of work behind the scenes with young people, and nothing resonates more than an actual story. Like when somebody says their story, and I don't have that story. I provide platforms for others to give that story, kind of thing, because that's how I get the kids, to like kind of sit up and say, wow, if that happened to her, wow, kind of thing. It's very important. Anyway, we'll leave that for a second. But
Well, I do want to interject a
your
little.
stories, no, but your story's empowering, because I have so many questions for you. We're so stuck right now. And Jennifer, things are just going downhill. That is the reality of what's
Yeah.
going on right now. Despite all the discussion, despite the internet, I mean, we live in a digital world, so it's here to stay. So let's leverage it for good, right?
Right.
But it's getting worse every day. Things are getting worse. Mental health is getting worse. Our kids are getting worse. Our young people, those are our future, adults and leaders in America. So I'm very frightened for what's going to be 5, 10, 15 years for this specific group. But let's go back for a minute. I want our warriors listening to understand, what is an SSRI? Explain what it is.
Serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it's basically a drug that works on the chemicals in the brain. There's this philosophy that mental illness is all a chemical imbalance in the brain. When there's a lot of research out there right now, Dr. Chris Palmer is one of the premier researchers in this field, and some other people, Shivani Sethi out of Stanford, that they're really saying that, well, hold up, this is not really true. That there's a metabolic component to the brain. About, does it run on sugar? Does it run on fats? And there's studies that show a ketogenic diet can greatly improve mental stress, mental disorders, particularly when it comes to severe ones such as bipolar and schizophrenia. So this is why this is a very maha issue, because I think what we see is with the increase in junk food, increase in a junk food diet, increase in processed foods, this is a component of it. You touched on another important one, which is tech and social media. I mean, that really would probably be my first culprit, but also children's literal diet. It's their diets, whether it's what they're consuming in their mouth or what they're consuming through their eyes and their ears through social media. These are all things that contribute to a diet of what we feed on, right? Even if you're not talking just food, it's does this thing nourish us, or does it deplete and destroy us? And I would say we now have a diet, whether you're talking about food or whether you're talking about tech and social media, that is no longer nourishing. It might be sustenance. It might give us something to do for the day. It might give us something to do for the body. It gives us something to eat, but it's not nourishing us.
Right.
And so I think, unfortunately, with the advancement in technology, has come an advancement of non-nourishing foods and intake, no matter if that's, again, through the sense, whatever sense you have. And so, again, policy can do a lot as far as hopefully the food guidelines, and we, focus on a lot of this research. But I think what we're seeing is the chemical imbalance in the brain model of mental health is going to become very quickly outdated. And the other thing I talk about, and I'm going to be focusing on more writing about this in the future, and hopefully over the break, and will come out in the new year, is this compartmentalized approach to health. Like, oh, that's your brain, and we can fix that by tweaking the chemicals. Well, no, you're a spiritual body, you're a physical body, and you're a mental body. All these things are synergistic in their workings. So you can approach it. For me, as I started my own healing journey, I found that the foods I ate benefited my mental health. My mental health benefited my physical health. My spiritual process of coming back to Christianity and going to church and taking communion, that was nourishing. All of these things then became nourishing as opposed to destructive. For all of my physical health got better. Even as a health and fitness kind of influencer and expert, I wasn't really healthy. I had a great BMI and I was thin and all those kinds of things, but my mental health, I'd say, was suffering. And so all of these things interplay with each other. And as you feed one and nourish one aspect of yourself, the other aspects will also be nourished.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I've said to my husband in the past, I've never had one doctor. I don't really run to doctors, but occasionally I have to go to one. I've
Right.
never had one doctor in my entire life say to me, "What is your diet?"
Mm.
Like they've never asked me, I mean, I'm plant-based, that doesn't matter, but they've never like inquired about like, what do you eat? And I would always say to him, they don't really get a full picture of what's going on kind of thing.
That's strange
And
because that should be the first thing they ask.
I
What do
may
you
I
eat?
don't know if they ask you. I've never had a doctor say to me, um, and I'm lucky I infrequently, go to doctors. But I've never had one say to me, including the gynecologist. I use all women doctors. So it's like they've
Yeah.
never said, like, tell me about your diet. Like not once.
Well,
And I
they're not
thought,
taught that in schools. I mean, that's the other thing is they're not getting they have maybe 3 hours of nutrition. You're talking food is medicine. Like
right.
again, this is the overarching theme of Maha too, is that why is pharmaceuticals the first thing we run to when it's cheaper and more long lasting when you overhaul your lifestyle and your diet, when you eat more whole foods, vegetables, meats, unprocessed foods. Some people choose plant-based, that's fine, it depends, but you're probably eating more whole foods. I would gather you're not eating a lot of vegan Twinkies and vegan donuts.
No, I don't eat that stuff.
Yeah.
That's not what I eat kind of stuff. But I'm also concerned, I'm digressing here for a minute, so bear with me.
No problem.
Our youth are I'm in New York City. I see
Mm.
obese children, not children that are chubby or a couple of pounds. And I'm a New Yorker my whole life. I never used to see, well, I can go back, 50 years and think about it. But I see children struggling to walk down the street, struggling to hold a backpack, struggling so unhealthy. And when I see them, and this is not judging them, I worry for them, Jennifer, because if they're like this, and we have all these different studies about their kids have diabetes now at young ages and things like that. How are they going to be as an adult? And again, and you're the expert in this, mentally, this has got to drag them down just all around. So I'm very concerned about our kids today.
One of the key issues Callie Means brought up when Maha was kind of first coming into being, and he said, "You have a sick child, you have a patient for life. You have a revenue stream for life. If you have an obese child that doesn't get better, and that is costing us a lot, trillions and trillions of dollars. So do we decide to create policy that is going to help on the front end and save us millions and trillions of dollars on the back end in healthcare costs? And that might mean the waivers for SNAP subsidies for sugar. You can't buy soda and candy on SNAP dollars. I'm not saying everybody in New York City is on SNAP. I mean, I think it's just this proliferation of processed foods. And one thing that's interesting to note is everyone's like, well, it's not economic to eat whole foods or organic or vegetables. It's cheaper to eat McDonald's and junk food. I said, well, is it really? Because one, it's costing us all that money on the back end in healthcare costs. And two, it's being subsidized. So if you had the real dollar amount of that food at the register, it probably would not be cheaper. It might be even more expensive than a whole food because we have subsidies that go in. The top agricultural subsidies are corn, from which corn syrup is made, and a lot of processed food, and a lot of seed oils, corn, soybean, wheat, and sugar. Those are the top subsidized crops. So those are in all the junk food products, right? We don't subsidize healthy meat. We don't subsidize eggs. We don't subsidize vegetables. So again, you're actually only paying cheaper for those items because the government is giving bolsters to their prices. It's not a true free market, essentially.
We could go off into a whole nother program about all of that. We'll let that sit for the next time you come back. But how crazy, and I know you know this, that we're not encouraging, healthy, or over the past few decades, healthy eating. When I grew up, my mother cooked dinner every night, and nobody ever exercised in those days, but nobody was overweight. It was just more, I guess, the food quality was different and better in those days. But now, you can be very healthy and not spend a lot of money on different dishes and vegetables
Yeah.
and beans and things of that nature if you really want to. Because I hear that argument a lot that in vulnerable neighborhoods, they'll say,
Mhm.
well, they don't have these foods available to them. They're too expensive for them. But they're at the McDonald's, that
Right.
and it
Well,
makes
and
no sense.
I was going to do a video and take I was going to do two. One was going to be kind of how to shop healthy on a SNAP budget. Um, the fact of the matter is those systems have been so abused by
Yeah.
people who don't really need them or who are getting more money from subsidies for food and just spending them on other things and soda and candy. So there's that issue of it. But I was going to do a video on like, here's how to eat healthy. Like you said, like when times get tough, first spend on whole quality foods especially for children, like whole milk dairy or whole fat dairy. They need that fat. They need that cholesterol. And then we get into, let me side table that thought that I had on the food pyramid. But and then when it gets a little leaner, like you said, there's lentils and there's rice and
Yeah.
things and spices that can be used to make things taste good. And then the new month comes again and you try to get more fruits and vegetables, and then you stretch it out. But I think more of the issue is, like you're saying, it is choice. At some point we have to take sovereignty and take responsibility, and I think this is another piece of it. We've lost what it means to be a good citizen in this country, that my choices do affect other people as far as my health choices. Because if I have to go to the doctor and insurance has to pay for that, that's inflating costs, all of these things. This came out of a conversation I was having on LinkedIn, a little debate. Didn't know this woman, but the comment was, some people just have to be on pharmaceutical drugs the rest of their life, and that's the way it is, essentially. I said, well, that's not the way it is. If I'm paying for it through my insurance, through raised premiums, if I have to pay for your lack of sovereignty over your health, it can't be just the way it is, because other people are footing the bill. At some point, we have to say, these are my circumstances. How do I make the best of those circumstances?
Yeah.
How can I improve my health? And I will say, like, exercise does play a big part. Like you said, we had whole foods, but we did exercise. Like, I remember I ate, sticky buns for breakfast, and I mean, rice cakes with peanut butter. It was just that I didn't eat that much. I just was so busy playing and doing my sports
Yeah.
and outside that, honestly, probably maybe wasn't wasn't a whole lot of vegetables, but it's just I was so active. And maybe that comes back to bite me in the way of like not great habits, but I ended up and with my own choices, and now I make more choices that buy more, where I buy more vegetables and whole foods. But the activity does play a part in this, and
Yeah.
this is tech. Going back to tech, how tech's destroying our mental health and our physical health. I think we should have home ec back in schools. I think we should teach kids how to cook. I think we should teach them how to garden. We should teach them more life skills, on how to be a holistic human person,
Right.
along with reading and math. And that would go a long way. And some of these self-sufficient, making you are responsible for you at some point. And the less you see yourself as a piece of the whole, that what you do affects others, the less you're going to care, particularly when the government is going to support it through funding.
Mm. And by the way, I've seen a lot over the years in the supermarket, people buying soda, candy with their benefits as I stand there, with maybe my little coupon, for 10 cents off my little loaf of bread or something. But yeah, people have to take.
I go to Whole Foods, and so a lot of the times I just buy what's on sale and healthy, particularly with
Me
shelf
too.
stable items. I mean, there's a tip. Just get what's on sale for shelf stable items, like soups I'm so looking forward to winter, right? I really consciously buy things on sale.
Jennifer, I want to ask you why. Why do you think, let's talk about now young women, okay? I throw into that teen girls because we do a lot of work at the Warriors, digital safety, all of that, everything they're seeing online, but let's go there. I mean, the floor is yours because the internet, again, is really, I'm going to use this word. This is me saying this. I've decided recently it's evil. Even though we're using it and we love it, it's not going away. right? We don't want it to go away. But what we are seeing, especially for young women with eating disorders, with sexualization of themselves, of going online like an OnlyFans rather than work, a minimum wage job. And we saw a lot of this. We learned a lot, believe it or not, during COVID. I don't even like to say that word, that period. But the only good thing I think that came out of that is we saw what children were doing on their Chromebooks, government issued Chromebooks. We saw what they were being taught. We saw the ideologies instead of the reading, writing, and arithmetic. So bring it forward. Let's talk about young women right now. What are you seeing? Give us an overall, and how are we going to really change this?
I am so glad, Lynn, you used the word evil. It's funny. I was just thinking this morning, is that too strong? Right? What is going on here? And I agree with you. I do think at this point, it is more of a force for evil than it has been for good. At the very least, there should be restrictions on this, particularly with the social media. I am fine using the force of the government in some cases, and if it's to save our children from the porn industry, from hypersexualization of young children, I feel okay with that. I know it's the slippery slope argument, and maybe I haven't thought it through enough. I really need to look more at some of the policy proposals, but my initial gut reaction is like, we're in trouble. These kids are in trouble. And so if there's not policy, we need to find a support structure with the family that makes sure that the mother is at home, that, and I think we are seeing some of that. And there's more of an uptick in homeschooling. We're pulling children out of public schools. That's wonderful. Taking, again, more control over our own lives. I think in general, we've just given way too much over, whether it's to the government or to big tech or to big food and big pharma. We're just kind of saying, take care of us. You take care of us.
Yeah.
And we're giving over our sovereignty slowly. And I think we need to reclaim that, and parents need to reclaim what it means to be a parent. Children are not your friends. I sometimes feel reluctant because I'm not a mother in giving advice, because I know it's hard for parents when they're pulled in a lot of different directions. Women have been pulled out of the family and into the workforce a lot. And again, I'm not saying that is flatly a bad thing, but when it takes away from your role as a mother, I think you're making a choice. You're making a choice to hand over some of that raising of your child to either an agency or the state. And I would love to see stronger family policy, which is what we're working at Heritage, that encourages mothers to stay in the home, whether that's work from home options. We have a lot of that at Heritage, whether it's more time off, or whether it's just creating an economy where a single earner can support a family, where the father can support a family. I talk a lot about the destructions of feminism, and I think this is one of them. I'm talking second wave feminism, sexual liberation, and the promise that if women became more like men in the workplace and in the bedroom, that they would be happy. And the results are overwhelmingly demonstrating they are not happy. So we need to go back to the basics. I feel we've gotten so wrapped up in innovation and technology and progress. This is not progress. This is actually throwing us backwards into a lot of severe health outcomes.
Yeah, I agree. You're preaching my playbook, frankly. Going back to that word evil, it is a word, Jennifer, I have avoided until fairly recently, because I've racked my brain. I work 20 hours a day on all of these issues with kids and families. And I've come to the conclusion there is no other way to look at it except there's evil at hand. And so I recently say that there's evil. Okay. Getting back, I was also on the tail end as a kid from the women's movement. Like, I remember everybody was marching in New York. You had every religion, every color, every kind of woman. So I was lucky enough actually to sort of witness, and I always read a lot of things as a kid, but moving forward now, all these years later, we have slipped into, women are in a worse spot than ever before, in my opinion. The hardest job in the world, I think, is being a mother, is being a mom. And we need to applaud that. And we need to figure out But that being said, Jennifer, and here's the argument, we work with a lot of vulnerable communities, a lot of single parent households. The mom has to work to put food on the table. How are we taking, because I can preach, you can preach, but when it comes down to it, when you have to work and put food on the table. So I'm always talking about, how do we help everybody get out of the vicious cycles and all that? It's a big vicious circle. And I don't know, except if we just kind of start little in the community and try to build out. I guess, I always suggest helping each other with each other, the children, kind of the old fashioned way people used to do
Right.
it, or,
Right.
on the blocks when we all rode our bicycles, parents were always looking out for. But again, people are so self-involved and selfish. And this internet, I think, has fueled a lot of these behaviors. Yeah, I'm going to blame the internet because I know I have a lot of studies. I'm sure you do too. How do we get back to that? Because we do have to get back to just the basics. Eating at the dinner table, like cooking a meal with your children, making your children clean up the dishes, just those basics. What are you seeing right now? Because the alpha generation, those are kids born 2010. So they're not that old. They're like 14, 15. Studies are showing that the pendulum is swinging back for them, where they're seeking religion. They are going to libraries to have actual, because we're always like, take an actual book, not on your iPad or phone. You turn, I'm like, turn the pages, smell the covers, get to the end of it. How are we going to do all this except keep talking about it and tell people this is what we have to do?
That's one of the things, is awareness and education. And then people have to change habits. I mean,
Yes.
ultimately, the culture has to change. And like you're saying, this new generation, God bless Charlie Kirk, was such a force for good in that area. We've lost someone, and I think we're seeing a rift from when the peacemakers leave us within the conservative movement about that. And there is some kind of debate about, do we move forward? How fast do we move forward with this tech? Or do we kind of just go back to the old fashioned working with our hands? People need to be grounded in what's real again and what's true. And I think returning some dignity to jobs like farming, like manufacturing, like when people work with their hands, and this also speaks to the greater rift of I don't think that we get back to this place unless we stop pitting men against women. Because if you see what's happening, I use this woman in my article as an example. She's got this huge following on Instagram or TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. So the only way I see TikTok videos is vis-a-vis Instagram, like a normal old person. But she's talking about decentering men in her life. There is a huge cultural rift where men and women are pitted against each other. And on the extreme version, you get this woman on this social influencer. She's in Canada, but again, this is not just America. This is worldwide. She's in Canada talking about decentering men in her life and how much happier she is without men in her life. And she's just, I mean, the self-absorption is beyond. And what you're saying is social media feeds this by telling women, going to yoga whenever you want and having all the unlimited matcha drinks that you want and having all this disposable income. You see all these videos of women who are like, this is what I do as a single woman. This one woman was watching cartoons. She goes, I get to watch cartoons whenever I want. And I'm thinking, that is so infantile. So men and women aren't maturing. They're not marrying, and they're not being forced to mature, because I think one of the forces that compels men to mature quickly, one is marriage, and two is certainly children.
Yes.
So now you've got men in their basements. You hear about these incels, the involuntary celibates. They move towards the Nick Fuentes people, who are angry and bitter at women. They are very, I'm all for patriotism, but they are racist. They're looking for someone to blame for because they've been demonized for the past 30 years. Men have been demonized in this culture in the name of women empowerment and feminism. So you have that cohort that's turning to someone like Nick Fuentes, who I think is vile. And then you have these young women going, we don't even want anything to do with men. And so the whole gender thing, then you've got men and women are interchangeable. right? There is no distinction between them. So boys can become girls. And that's what happens when you fray the holy bond of matrimony, of union, of marriage, is that the distinguishing factors between sex become non-existent. There's no more coupling. There's no more seeing these two sexes as interdependent and complementary, right? That men have certain roles and women have certain roles, and we shouldn't maybe be switching some of those. And sometimes I get torn. I have to build against my own kind of arguments because I'm a single woman in the workforce, right? This was the path God had for me. But I still understand that a family and a healthy marriage and children is the foundation for a healthy civilization and a healthy society. So even though I'm not in that role, I have another role to play. God had another role for my life. I still promote it and support it and understand that this is fundamentally good. This is a societal good. This is a public good. Marriage, children, stable families.
Yeah. And there's plenty of different studies to support all of this, which is, I wish the media more would talk about these issues. But of course, they don't because, they want to talk about the low hanging fruit all the time. But we'll leave that one. Who's behind all this destabilization? That's another program probably too, but
yeah, I mean, it depends.
So, you go after our young people when you want to change society. You attack the young, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Jennifer, when I travel across the country and things, people are like you and me. We're being fed like everybody's out. Of course, we're hearing online or whatever, like the same 10 people all the time, but they're like you and me, seeking the same and talking. So why do they want this destabilization? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, some will point to China, right? They export TikTok. They don't have TikTok in China. They have their version of it. I can't remember what it's called, but it promotes National Geographic videos and animals and natural wildlife.
40 minutes a day for kids, 40 minutes.
Right.
And then
they have limits on it. And it's being imported. So part of it they think is a national security, this
I
is
agree.
in TikTok, but I agree. It's the long march through the institutions. This started way back before I was born, with kind of infiltrating the higher educations and then infiltrating the lower systems of education. When I say lower, I mean lower grades, K through 12, because they know it destabilizes as a country. No amount of policy can undo what's been done to the United States right now, unless you're going to be an authoritarian state, because people aren't choosing it. People are choosing to take their kids to drag queen story hour. I don't know what to do about those people. And then other people will say it's the George Soros and him pumping money into the NGOs, and exporting these kind of new progressive values out into the world, particularly into Africa, and South America, and destabilizing, their cultures. And then if you want to go back to your point, it is the forces of darkness and the forces of evil. And
that's it. There's no way I can figure out of this. I've racked my brain with what's going on, as we're hit over the head every day, like with a hammer, with something new happening. There's so much to talk about.
I struggled with this, as I returned to Christianity, I did struggle with, well, no, everybody's good. I mean, my faith kind of helped me reconcile that, but it's like, you think about it, it's like, why would anyone want to do this to a child? Why would George Soros, like, what is their ultimate goal? And it is, the devil has a hold of people. They think.
Okay, but here's what I say to that, Jennifer. If you know about this and I know about this, why isn't it shut down in our country? Like, I don't understand. Shut it down, a George Soros. I like to say we use him as shorthand because there's a lot of people with the George Soros. I say we use him like a shorthand. Yes, he's involved, but there's a lot of other ones we probably never heard their names. Right behind.
Well, Pritzkers.
Yeah, and we know about it, and yet it's this. I don't mean to sound flippant, but it's like, money talks and crime walks. It's like money. You mentioned it, at the destruction of our country, our society, but our precious kids. I mean, you point out the drag shows. Who in their mind has a 2-year-old putting money in somebody's like underwear or whatever they're doing there? I try not to look at those things. who are these people? I just did a wonderful interview with a friend of mine in New Jersey. She went through several years of hell because she was checking out a library book in the kids' library. Her twins were 8 at the time, and they were all sexual books a few years ago. And all she did was ask the woman behind the desk, very well mannered, not a troublemaker, "Oh, I'd like to know who picks the selections." And they tried to destroy this family like you can't believe. However, she recently won this whole lawsuit in the state of New Jersey that they were trying to say that she defamed the librarian and this and that. And all she did was ask, who picks the books? I'd like to know because, it's Martin Luther King Day and we have books on, well, we're a family show here. You know what I mean, Jennifer. And as she was checking out the books, the display was all these sexual things. And she went through almost 4 years of hell, what they tried to do with her. But the good news is the judge dismissed this whole thing. So there is a lot of hope. We have more people talking about it. We have more education, people stepping up. We definitely need you on the scene to talk about these things. But I want to go into a little bit. We work with a lot of kids who are buying all these drugs on Snap and getting them delivered to their back door, their front door, the street corner. Touch into this telehealth, the hims, the hers a little bit, because now we're in AI. And especially with children, AI companions, but it affects adults as well. AI chatbots giving out medical and psychiatric information, and they're machines. They're not, experts. Talk a little bit about that, because I don't understand why people think they can just buy drugs online. Where do those drugs come from? What's really in those drugs? Are they from China, cut with fentanyl? Because we deal with a lot of fentanyl, and all the drugs, including marijuana, are being anything to make it cheaper. So just touch on the SSRIs, and they're buying, I guess, Prozac, whatever. Do they still have that? Like in the 80s in New York, it was like, it's a Prozac nation. There was some big movement. It just came to me when I was talking. There was a whole thing about it was cool to take Prozac. People were talking about. Now here we are 40 years later. What's the situation online, though, with this telehealth, telemental health? What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that the products that they're getting, I mean, I'm assuming those have to be FDA regulated, and those are highly regulated. So I don't think getting them through there is necessarily the danger. I do think it's an accessibility thing. It just makes them very accessible. Now, if you're getting stuff off the street, or I have heard horror stories of, people thinking it's just a pharmaceutical and it's laced with fentanyl or some other deadly drug. And I think it depends on where you're getting it. I can't imagine that these telehealth things aren't regulated. So that wouldn't be my big concern with those. It would be more of just the general accessibility. But again, I just think the proliferation of them will increase the chance of contamination for sure. You don't know, or people giving them like their peers, right? Because now, again, it's like cool in high school to do these things. So they're just getting it from who knows where. And I think we need to really question our cavalier attitude about pharmaceutical drugs, and that they're always helpful. The more that you can use natural remedies, the more you can use food as medicine movement. Again, you keep saying this stuff about tech and what is it going to take? We just need to get back to basics of what makes a good life. But I feel like without religion, without some source of fulfillment and purposeful living, then the further away we get from that. I do also want to address, you asked the question of us, like, how did we get here? Why aren't we fighting the Soroses? Well, it's because they pay off a lot of the politicians. They pay for these lax district attorneys, right? And who's voting them in? Well, a lot of people aren't voting anymore. I think that was one of the blessings of COVID as well, as people became more aware of what bad policy, how bad policy affects them in their day-to-day life. But you do see it's mostly wealthier academic people that have high academic achievement, liberal people vote for these people, mostly because the policies don't affect them, right? Yeah. So they can pull their children out of public schools and put them in private schools where they're not reading this crap. And the other people that are voting for these people are liberal women. And we have to look at the voting. They said if liberal women did not vote in the past election, it's clear red all the way. If liberal women didn't vote. And I think the system and the influence has taken hold of women's guilt for some reason. Because we are naturally more empathetic, we're told children are born in the wrong body and they're struggling. Of course we want to help those children, but we're seeking the wrong remedies of how to treat them, right? But these women are so easily duped, and they're so easily pulled by their heartstrings. They're not thinking. There's that. And then you have the women like Cynthia Nixon that somehow feel more virtuous if their kid is non-binary or demigender or like they're living out their virtue through their children. They
yes,
see this.
I believe that.
It's weird. And you hear this a lot. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who said, and this is also, I think, statistically backed up, that it's women leaving marriages thinking that they're going to have a better, again, this feminism, the influence of feminism, that they're going to have a better life without their husbands. They take half their husband's money and then they say, I'm living independent. Well, you're not.
Yeah.
So, and then they go vote liberal because it affirms them in some way. So there's so many strings you can tether to the problems of today. And I think we just have to be very systematic and very holistic about where we choose to kind of direct our energies. And you said it too. I think it has to start at the local community level.
It has to.
Get involved in your local school boards, vote for your local commissioners, vote for governors, because a lot of this does come down, particularly with health policy, to a state by state basis as far as agricultural and nutrition. Yeah. With the exception of the food guidelines, which is a whole other issue. But I think, in a way, like you said, some things had to be destroyed in the return and the rebuilding. And the younger generation has proven to be more conservative because they've seen that what they were promised has not come to pass.
Yeah. We work with a lot of young people. They're terrific. I will say like 25 to 17. And they're actually coming out in full force here in New York. They're very angry that they've been used as guinea pigs. Yes. I outright tell kids, because we go into classrooms, they're making money off of you, the internet. They're not your friends, and that gets them like, what do you mean they're making money off of me? Like any way to get the kids, right? Because it's all about the youth. I'm trying to get to the kids, right?
You know what you tell them, Lynn? If you're not buying a product, remember you are the product.
Yes.
If you're not buying something, that's very clear to them then. Like if you're not actually spending money buying something, you are the product. Their attention is the product.
Yes, that's it. Their eyeballs, they're just being there, their addiction. We work with so many parents who the children are literally addicted or have committed suicide or great self-harm because the parents took the devices away, things of that nature. I want to say, what should I ask you? Because I have so many questions. Charlie Kirk. I want to go back to that for a second. I'll tell you why. I saw that. I always knew about Charlie Kirk, but I'm not saying I followed him, but you always knew about Charlie Kirk. He was there. He popped up. Apparently he was very big on TikTok. That's the only platform I'm not on. I never wanted to be on TikTok. I just stayed away from it. But so many kids, when that happened, came forward to say, oh yeah, we saw Charlie on TikTok. Because they would tell me, oh yeah, we know. Kids I would never even think, and they'd be like, yeah, we saw Charlie on TikTok. And then I saw, Jennifer, the so many young people turning out and people asking about, can I form a chapter? And I said, so our young people are looking for a place to land. Like they were looking for community. They're looking, we have to hold on to that. And I hope Turning Point can, and we should cash in. And I don't mean like actually cash in, but they are looking obviously for a place, whether that's faith, whether that's, a turning point where they can talk back and forth and challenge each other. I mean, in my day here in New York at NYU, we had what we called salons, where we debated nonstop, but everybody went out for coffee afterwards. Like there were a couple of people got heated, but everybody was friends. I hope, but what are we going to do, Jennifer, with all these, I'll say Charlie Kirk young people that are thousands and thousands, they're seeking something. We can't let go of that. We have to mentor them and help them. Stay there and build for them. And again, getting back to our young people, if young women want to be medicated, I guess that's what you call it, they're now thinking it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned to you before we started, I saw two women at separate events at the lunch table just start popping pills. And the first time I saw it, I thought it was so strange. Just take it out, you're talking and you're popping pills and you're little, and the kids are all seeing this. So it's being normalized, right? Society's habituated to all this. Um, Directly right now, if you're talking to a young woman, what do you want to say to them?
Uh,
A loaded question, I know, but
no, where do you start? I'd say seek what we call the permanent things, the things that matter. The issue is age old, Lynn. I'm sure when we were younger, it was body image, right? We had magazines. There's always going to be something influencing us.
yeah.
Unfortunately, social media is just fast and easy and now addictive. Magazines weren't addictive, right? You can only take in so many magazines before there weren't any more magazines. So
Right.
but they're kind of age-old questions of who are we? For me, and I only tell people this when you ask me, because the honest answer is things changed for me when I rooted my identity in Christ and nothing else. When I knew who I was because Christ told me who I was. I was a child of God that was, sinful and flawed, but the more I turned to him and the more I embodied my life
Mhm.
within his life, the better I became, the healthier I became. I feel like the more force for good I became. And I would tell women to turn to something religious. I mean, and I do think certain religious, like I wouldn't say go to Muslim, because they're going to make you dress in a hijab, and you're going to be hidden. I think we become fully formed in who, again, this is my own personal belief, when we identify with who we are as Christ made us, as God made us. That means we have a purpose. And I don't think you can disconnect women's biological functions from who they were made to be, for what their purpose is. We are specifically the ones that make and carry a baby. We make a baby with a man and we carry a baby. I don't think you can disconnect that from our purpose in the world. Now, whether that comes to fruition or not, like me,
Mhm.
I still realize this is an integral part of who I am. My monthly cycles are an integral part of who I am. Understanding how my body works is an integral part of who I am. Understanding my mood fluctuations monthly, and then as I age, it is such a part of, like, this is a big thing with any kind of structure that's going to destroy civilization, is when you remove the physical body from the mental and the spiritual body, right? That has brought us the transgender movement, that it doesn't really matter what your body, you're not really your body. It doesn't matter what your body is. You can change your body and become fulfilled as a human being. Well, we know that's a lie, right? And the transgender movement has proven that's a lie. So I would tell women is embrace who you are as a woman. It's going to look different for every woman. I wrote a piece called Save the Tomboys. I was a total tomboy. My hair was always short. I was in a tutu. It was such like the dichotomy. I was like this walking oxymoron. I was this kind of athletic looking little girl with like little sausage thighs in her tutu with short hair. So I was still a girl. I was still doing ballet, and my dance ended up taking me to a career, but I wasn't a ballerina. I was an athletic dancer. Yeah. Right? God gave me different skills. So it's not going to look the same. I was never a girly girl that wore a lot of makeup. I still don't. I don't have any nail polish on. I'm not a frivolous girl. It doesn't mean I'm not a woman. And so I would say embrace who God made you to be and the purpose God made you for. And that, again, might take you in a different direction than another woman. It might not mean a family with 6 babies. Maybe it's a marriage and an adopted child. Maybe it is being a single woman, but I wouldn't claim that being single and unmarried without children is a virtuous life. And I think that's what feminism has done. It says you are going to be more yourself as a woman, more empowered if you get a job and don't have children. You will be free. Well, we always know that freedom does not mean restrictions. It's not doing what we want to, it's doing what we ought, as Pope John Paul, famously quoted. That's not the exact quote, but freedom, it doesn't exist in doing what we want to, it's doing what we ought to do. And if we are children of God, then women should embrace what they ought to do.
I like that. You give a lot of food for thought, Jennifer Galardi. You really do. And it's such an important discussion. I promise me you'll come back, because there's just so much to talk about. And I'm always, we talk about things and then they go away. You know what I mean? I want to have continuing conversations about these issues, because I don't like the word brainwashing, but women need to hear these things. Women need to hear it's okay, if you go to church. I have women that whisper to me, like, I'm like, why are you whispering that you go to church? What's the big deal? Well, I mean, I'm here in New York City. It's a different animal here, but I still maintain, despite New York City, there are more women like us. You just don't hear about them, because I meet them. They don't know who I am. I don't talk about politics or something. And they start talking to me, and they open up to me. So that's my kind of focus group, like what are women and girls, and teens, what are they saying? And we need you. We need to keep talking about this information. We need to say it's okay. We need to get back to, it's okay to say you want to be a mom. You want to be, I think in retrospect, at my age now, I think there's nothing more important than being married, being a mom, running the house. I don't care if that sounds, I'm going to say it out loud now.
That is.
No, but keeping a nice home.
I do that it doesn't matter if you're single or you're married. Like you can see the difference between my place and a bachelor's place. That's why they call it a bachelor pad, usually because it's messy and they don't care. And women are, again, there's our natural instincts. I may not be married, but I have a natural instinct to nourish and keep a space that's sacred for anybody that walks in here, that feels at home for any guest that walks in. I want them to be comfortable. I want them to be, feel like they're nourished. So it doesn't matter. Again, your womanhood, your femininity is going to be expressed in all different ways, but there's some things that are human nature to us. There are some things that God designed us to do, and it is to be the nurturers of the home and of the community.
I'm going to say amen, sister, to that one. Now, will you get busy on writing about healthy foods and put out menus and things like that I can share with everybody? Because again, we want people to eat healthy. You pointed out, you feel better. If you feel better in one area, mentally, you can do your job better, do your school better, just think better friendships, better relationships. Yep. We need you to work on that. So that's your assignment for me. You may be working on that, but
there's a piece that should come out today about how to do a Maha Thanksgiving on the Daily Signal.
Okay, so good. I will look for that and post it. I will actually post that. Well, I want to say the op-ed is, most women are on crazy pills and it's bad for everybody. We only touched the surface, but I think you pointed out a lot of good things going on. Thank you, Jennifer, for bringing truth into this space, for speaking freely. I think it's being very brave. I like that we can have these discussions. I'm tired of people holding back. And then they tell me afterwards, well, but I really think this, or, I can see there's none of that with you. I can see you're a straight shooter with everything. But your research is something we always need, because at Lynn's Warriors, we depend on, stats, studies, research, other voices. And you're bringing such purpose to all of this. And we at the Warriors appreciate all of your hard work, your efforts. And I want to say, let us keep the conversation going. Let us speak again soon. And I want to say, you're a warrior. That's what you are. You're a warrior.
I will take that with honor. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you. And I'll have everything linked in the body of this video, all about you. So everybody can take their time, read, and I would tell everybody to share everything of yours, because it's so important, everything we've touched upon today. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining me. And you're stuck with me now. We will speak again soon.
I love it.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks.